it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Gail Dine.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the talk. How have we gotten to the place where we've gotten? Just last week, I was invited on MSNBC, which is a cable news show, by Melissa Harris Perry, who is not your normal talk show host. She's actually a PhD in political science, an African-American woman, smart, writes great stuff about race and gender in the United States of America. So I got invited. And let me tell you, after 20 years of dealing with the media, I know that until I am sitting in that studio with that camera rolling, there is no insurance that I'm going to be on that show. So I get invited, they're telling me they're going to send me all my directions and how to get there, how to get to New York. And that was Sunday. And I was meant to go on Saturday. Tuesday, no call. Wednesday, no call. So I know now something's going on. So I email and I said, you know, I'm waiting for directions to where I'm staying in New York, what hotel. And I get an email saying, oh, the segment is, quote, changing. Well, yes, changing. Note, not cancelled, changing. So automatically my feminist antenna go up and I think, yeah, what does this mean? Well, let me tell you what changing means. It means going from a radical feminist critique of the porn industry to inviting on to speak about pornography a woman called Tristan Taormino. Does anyone know this? Yeah. Tristan Taormino, you might not know this, she's a feminist. She just happens to work with the pornographers and all the most disgusting, vile misogynists in the world you've ever met, but she calls herself a feminist. And when I said that I was bumped by a pornographer, I was told by Tristan Taormino on Twitter, how dare Gail Dine say that she was bumped by a pornographer because I too am a feminist. So it would seem Bill Gates is obviously a socialist. He gives money out. I mean, if you can call yourself anything you want, then what does our movement mean? Okay, so this is where identity politics has gotten us. It's gotten to this ridiculous point where you can basically partner with every misogynist in the world, but because you've got a vagina, you can argue you're a feminist. So what we're going to talk about is how did we get to this absolutely crazed place. So let's begin with this statement. This is one of the leaders of third-wave feminism called Jennifer Baumgardner, and she wrote on Alternet, which is a radical site, well, a kind of liberal lefty, feminism is something individual to each feminist. Yes, sisters, you might have thought feminism was a movement that we all had certain assumptions about, but no, it's individual to what you actually think it is. So what does this mean and how the hell did we get here, okay? In a couple of generations, how have we gone from radical feminism, in your face, fuck you, to this? So let's figure this out. And of course, to begin, we have to begin with these two. So what we're going to look at is how the world changed post-Reagan Thatcher. Now, this was a critical moment in history, because the critical moment in history was that the attempt to build a somewhat collective society post-Second World War was completely undermined by these two. This was when neoliberalism on the ground really began. And what I'm going to do in this talk is to talk about how neoliberalism has destroyed feminism. It's also destroyed the entire world as well and the economy. But specifically, I'm going to focus in on how we get to this absolutely ridiculous statement that feminism is about what you make it, you make it, you make it, you make it. It's all our own individual empowerment, you know, and how we act in the world. So let's look at what they basically say. So the key to this was a statement that Margaret Thatcher once made, which is actually breathtaking. There is no such thing as society, only individual men and women. And when she said that, you've got to see this was the crux of neoliberalism. Neoliberalism acts as if we're all individuals. There's nothing collective, there's no class interest, there's no collective interest. But I'm going to argue, as we go through, that that's only true for the oppressed. Believe me, the oppressor class know that this is full of shit. They understand what it means to act as a class, okay? It's only us, the oppressed, who are not meant to act as a class. So neoliberalism, as a political movement, what does it mean? Well, it has certain tenets. The first, of course, is free market economy. Absolutely no intervention, by the government. And of course, the reason for that is because capitalists know that the only thing big enough to put any limits to their power is government. So you have this whole ideology that government's bad, you can't have any intervention in the government, which of course leaves them free rein. Minimal state intervention, limited social programs, because if you're poor, it's because you're a lazy shit who can't get out of bed in the morning. Free trade, very crucially, because we have to destroy any potential for developing countries to compete. Strong property rights of the rich. You have laws that basically are all about protecting the property rights of the rich. Mass privatization. And I live in the United States of America, and if you think you know what privatization is here, you ain't got a clue, right? Not one clue. And then, of course, weak unions. The absolute need to destroy anything collective on the power of the oppressed. So we have this. Okay, Julia? Now, what does capitalism look like? All right, what better way for me to analyse capitalism than the fact that all these major corporations control virtually everything you do, everything you see, everything you eat, everything you wear, everything you buy. This is what capitalism is like on the ground. And what you have now are a few multinationals who control virtually all of the world's economy. And they are kind of not founded in any country. They wander around the globe, laying waste to any country that they happen to go to at any moment. And as soon as individual workers start to organize in, I don't know, China or India, off they go to find another country to lay waste to. So, now let's think about what's happened post-Thatcher and post-Reagan, because this is what it's all about. Neoliberalism is about Robin Hood in reserve. It is about sucking money from the poor to the rich. Remember Robin Hood used to give from the rich? We'll forget this. We're doing the other way around now. We suck up from the poor to the rich. And to just give you an example, right, think about this. The income of the top 1% increased 265% between 1979 and 2006, while the lowest 20% rose by an average of 11%. What you have seen is absolute and utter class warfare. You have seen the working class and the poor decimated by the 1%. And this is the result. The fact that there was almost a global economic meltdown was no accident. It was years in the making. It was carefully strategized. And the fact is today in the United States of America, the level of inequality today is the same as before the Great Depression in the 30s. Right? That's the state the United States of America is in. And let me tell you, America is everyone's future. You understand that, right? What goes on in America first, everyone then tries to bring round the rest of the world. So you should always keep your eyes on the United States of America. And as I'm saying this, I'm just thinking I'm probably not going to get back in the country on Wednesday, but never mind. Okay, right. Now, how does this mean in race? How it means in race specifically, this is black unemployment, this is white unemployment. Studies show in America that the recession has basically wiped out all the economic gains that African Americans made post-civil rights, because they were the ones targeted for the mortgages that went underwater. They will never, ever again buy homes. They are finished. And so African Americans and Hispanics, and especially women, carry the burden of the global recession on their shoulders like nobody else, which of course means the poorer you are, the more likely you are to work really cheaply. And that's, again, what's crucial. And I want to quote a great friend of mine, Cynthia Enloe, a wonderful radical feminist economist, who said there's no such thing as cheap labor. There's labor made cheap. And that's what the recession has done. It has made labor cheap. So let's think about this as human beings. Most of us are born with empathy, okay? And what oppression has to do is destroy our capacity for empathy, because otherwise we would all be up in arms, enraged at the fact that there's people out there oppressed. So how do you make sure that those of us who are not starving, that those of us who have the riches that the world has to offer, how do you make sure that we don't march and say it's not fair? What you do is you create a material reality, i.e. capitalism, which is unfair, and then you develop an ideological support system to legitimize that inequality. That is always key. You cannot have inequality the material reality of limited access to resources for the majority without having an attendant ideology that legitimizes that inequality. Right? And this is what we're going to talk about, is how you create an ideology that says it's okay that 1% have the majority of the resources. It's okay that women are in pornography and the sex industry. It's okay that people of colour are relegated to either prisons or non-labour and non-employment. It's okay because we have this whole ideology that explains it away for us and makes it clear. So what we're going to look at is how ideological systems create justification for inequality. So, now if you ever want to understand ideology, the person who you always go to first is Karl Marx. This is your go-to person on understanding inequality. So let's take what Marx said. And he said, and I'm going to quote him here, "The ruling class rule as thinkers, as producers of ideas, and regulate the production and distribution of the ideas of their age. Thus, their ideas, the ideas of the ruling class, are the ruling ideas of the epoch." Notice, he is not saying the ruling class are all individuals just thinking by themselves. Right? He understood better than anybody that the ruling class, to maintain their power, act as a ruling class. It's just the rest of us who are meant to be all individuals wandering around not knowing what day it is. They know exactly what's going on. So now we have to figure out, how is it possible that a small percentage of the population control the way most of us think, control ideology? And I have to say, if you want an example on the ground right now of how the ruling ideas are controlling women, then the fact that the 50 Shades of Grey is number 1, 2, and 3 is no better than an example of how the ideology of patriarchy has set up home in women's minds.
Could you please say, because it has been mentioned.
I'm going to talk about that a bit later. I'm going to go through it, don't worry, okay? Now, how do ideas reproduce themselves? Right, when you own 1% of the population, or rather of the economy, you actually don't leave this shit to chance. You understand? You set up an entire system that ensures the reproduction of your power. So the first and most important thing is that you own most of the media. So we know that the corporations own Disney, News Corporation, Time Warner, and Viacom. The right-wing talk shows in the United States of America are central for the reproduction of right-wing ideology. We've got Rush Limbaugh, we've got Savage, we've got Hannity, we've got Medved, we've got all of these people. Just a very funny thing, when the Obamacare passed, okay, through the Supreme Court, Rush Limbaugh said, if it passes, I'm moving to Costa Rica. No, wait, guess what Costa Rica's got? National health care, right? That's the brains of these people. And then everyone was writing on Facebook, why wait? Go now, okay? Don't wait. So what you do is you control the media. This is absolutely crucial. And you use your control of the media to ensure that you shut down any alternative discourse that could in any way question the right of the elite to maintain their power. Okay, now, you also get control of think tanks. Now, in the United States of America, post-Second World War, the right wing got to work because what happened is that they realized that with the New Deal in the 1945s, 50s, when there was really an attempt, somewhat a little bit, not much, but a little attempt to redistribute wealth, the right wing went into action instantaneously. And they developed think tanks called the Cato Institute, the Heritage, the American Enterprise, all of these things. Now, what these think tanks do is they bring in right-wing economists, no shortage of right-wing economists, as you all know. They bring them in, they create position papers, and then they basically interface with the main media. Now, most journalists in the media have